Oh, let me tell you something. Busting makes me feel good.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Blockbusting, the podcast where we love to hate the movies.
Hey.
I'm your host, Jay Light. That deep, sultry voice you're on the other end, my guest, Jeff May.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Blockbusting.
Hello. Thanks for coming
All
in.
right.
We're gonna slow jam
It's
92.3 station this.
Yeah. Welcome to Blockbusting here on 92.3, the Slow Jam Tour.
And this podcast goes out to all you lovers out there.
Yeah. All you babies from the 80s ready to talk about the movie you love to love.
We got a call for some lonely hearts out there. Jeff, thanks for coming in, man.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here. I've been wanting to destroy this movie for quite some time, and I'm glad that you have welcomed me onto it.
And this movie is cult classic, childhood favorite, The Goonies.
It is a beloved movie of my generation that even when I saw it for the first time at around 6 to 7, meaning I was the specific demographic for this movie, even as a kid, I was like, this is some dog shit, and I hate it. I hated it. I hated it as a kid.
then?
As a kid.
That's wild.
As the specific demographic for this movie, I hated it.
This is insane to me to hear this.
I've
never. Well, okay. So first of all, background. I had not seen the Goonies at the target age.
Okay.
The first time I watched the Goonies, I was going through because I grew up in a childhood where I was not allowed to watch a lot of stuff, and sometimes stuff that I probably would have been allowed to watch just slipped through the cracks. And
Yes.
The Goonies is one of those movies.
It would have been approved, but it never made it.
Right, just didn't make it into the home video library.
You didn't walk by a Hot Topic, see a T-shirt, and be like, "What's that?" You didn't have that situation.
I saw Truffle Shuffle GIFs. You know, it was very slowly loading
so
on
you're
AOL.
a GIF guy. You're a GIF instead of a GIF guy.
It's GIFs.
Oh, that's right, for graphics interface.
Yeah, of course.
Format or whatever.
I like my images like I like my peanut butter. Choosy J's, choose GIF. So okay, so
Save that for the album. All right, save that for.
So The Goonies is, and there's some other movies that fit into this time frame.
Tons of them.
Like The Sandlot, I think is the one that I am glad that I saw at that age, and still I appreciate and approved of at the time.
And I think that's also, I mean, because The Sandlot, you're looking at a movie that's about 7 years after, so it's that sort of half a generation bump on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw The Sandlot in the theater when I was, I think, maybe 11 or 12, and I loved it. Like all those movies, like almost all of those 80s movies that are just like always, I loved them except The Goonies.
And The Goonies is one of those movies, and for those of you who might have not seen it in a while or are living under a rock like I was and didn't see it, 1985 American adventure comedy film directed by Richard Donner
Of Superman and Superman 2. Like it's like the cast, the crew of this, like the people that have created this movie, it's insane.
It's got, I mean, story by Steven Spielberg, screenplay by Chris Columbus.
Think about those three combined.
It's
Spielberg is the story by, and as well as, by the way, the producer of that movie, directed by Richard Donner and written by Chris goddamn Columbus.
And it came out, and it's a classic band of kids running around the neighborhood kind of story.
Very Feldman.
Right at the time, yeah, you got Corey Feldman, Sean Astin, Josh Brolin's in this.
Thanos is in it.
It's crazy. You got so many like just
you got that
fun characters.
That, racist stereotype Chinese kid.
Yep, Data.
Yep.
Data in the short round vein.
Yeah.
And it's
they just moved. That was a parallel shift. They were like, see this character? Now he's in 1985.
And this is
1938 or whatever.
And it's the classic kind of like ragtag group of kids kind of story where they are supposed to they're up against a big like evil general kind of evil, and then also very specific evil with the criminals.
The Fratellis.
The Fratelli family.
Hey, what Italian?
And they're going off to go find pirate treasure.
Of course.
And it's the kind of movie that you imagine you wanting to be as a kid. You want to go on an adventure like this.
This is the kind of movie that sort of, to me, has always violated the willing suspension of disbelief a little too hard for me, too. That's one of the things that I really want to bring up. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to shit on the movie too quickly, but like even in Star Wars, you're like, oh, this is what would be happening if this was the case. But in the Goonies, I'm like, none of this would actually happen.
Yeah.
Like, none of this even makes sense. It is a series of systematic, like, why are they making that choice in this movie to do that? And it has lasted in the pantheon of greatest movies of all time.
Dude, it got accepted to the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress for being culturally significant.
What the hell? Like, that is so, it's so
I don't know.
ridiculous. It's not even that much of a coming of age story. Like, there's no coming of age real aspect
it's not
to
a coming of age story at all.
Like, everything about it is very forced. It's almost like you're like, all right, well, we have to make this reason. Like, all right, we have to make them want to go on this journey. So in the span of 38 seconds, we'll establish that the houses are being foreclosed upon and that they're finding a secret museum pirate map in their own attic.
Right.
Because their old-timey father and smoking hot mom, who's clearly 3 decades younger than her husband,
Yep.
are storing museum materials in their attic.
You know,
In
just like people
Portland?
in Oregon do.
In Oregon, the land of leaky roofs, let's throw a couple $1 million worth of priceless artifacts.
This makes total sense.
And it's crammed in such that whole beginning. And all right, I'm going to look at this in a retroactive standpoint because I understand some movies are products of their time. This is some racist ass bullshit.
Oh yeah.
Throughout from start to finish. Every group is practically just
It's dialed up
it's
to
caricatured
an 11.
to the point where they open with, this is Rosalita. She's going to help us packing. And for no reason, she doesn't speak a word of English. And I'm never going to explain how I got her to work for me.
Why?
Why would you? I picked up Rosalita up at the Home Depot. Like that. There's none. And then you have Data, who's like, I make inventions. I'm a Chinese. And it's like, whoa, Jesus. Really? And the Fratellis are literally just like Italian mobster
Ripped straight off of a pizza box.
You might as well, including an opera singing brother.
Right.
And then they're just like, what else is a stereotype? Retards are strong, right?
Yeah.
Like, they even throw that in there. And it's like, Jesus Christ. What was it, the Old West that you're making these movies in? You just don't have any rules about how to treat people?
Well, it was the 80s, so it's like the kind of the filmmaking Wild West.
Sure. But the 80s wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. But you can that was a time when you really could throw everything at the wall and see what stuck. And especially if you're making a movie for kids, that is the way to go, because you're coming off like, there's this whole, the 70s was this crazy like auteur-driven renaissance.
Yeah, like,
right?
let's have dudes do cocaine and make art films.
Right. And so in the 80s, I feel like there was a lot of filmmaking that happened where people were like, oh, people can just make movies?
Oh, the consumerism is very rampant in the 80s as far as the movies are concerned.
Yeah.
And this is like a dream team of it's insanity. It would be like putting ice cream on pizza and serving it with orange juice. Like, all three of these things might be great, but somehow when you've mixed them together, it's made a very nightmarish combination for me. So I'm just like, I can't enjoy it.
So you watched this
I watched it
at the appropriate age.
At the exact appropriate. Now you figure, because I saw it on VHS. So
Okay.
you figure, I was born in 1981. So when the movie came out, I was 4 years old. So by the time it reached VHS and accessible to me, I was about 6 to 7 years old when I saw it. Like, perfect.
Right up your
The
alley.
internet isn't enough there for kids to evolve this fast. So I'm still like, it's still right there in that. And when you think of all these other 80s seminal like kids movies and stuff that people consumed, I ate them all up. Like Gremlins is still one of my favorite movies of all time. I watched Goonies and I was like, I hate it. I hate this. I hate it so much.
So at the time, what did you hate about it?
I didn't necessarily. I think it was dumb. I think that might have something to do with it. You can't start me with things like, you can't start me out as a kid on Star Wars and then expect me to just accept a garbage script.
Yeah,
or like a plot that's very poor. And I'm not saying Star Wars is like a perfect script or anything like that, but like, one of the things that I respect about a lot of kids movies from a certain time is they didn't pander to kids. They said they gave kids enough credit to be like, they'll get it.
Right.
And this does not do that. It's written by adults. It's, by the way, I will say this: Sean Astin is an amazing actor in this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm watching this movie, and like everyone else is like they're still finding their legs. Even Feldman, who was kind of like a savant actor,
Right, yeah.
at the time, Sean Astin is acting so much better than everybody else in this movie.
Yeah,
that it's almost insulting.
He's leagues ahead.
He is. I always get mad about his career,
Why
if
is
I can
that?
be honest.
Yeah.
Because he has always been sort of a movie middleman. Even when you look at throughout the entire sort of thread of his career, when you start it, like in the Goonies, where he's like the main character, but like he's not the exciting part.
Right. It's an ensemble cast.
Yeah.
You know, he's top name, but
Yeah.
he's not really
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
beating heart of the
You
story.
remember the racist Chinese kid, or
Yeah, you
it's funny
remember
that he's
Data
fat
and Chunk
kid,
and
or
Sloth.
the retarded guy. Like, that's what you remember about these awful caricatures. Meanwhile, Sean Astin is doing an Oscar-worthy performance at 11, just knocking it out of the park. And then you see, and then like even obviously. It was so weird to see Sean when he hit his peak in Lord of the Rings and Return of the King.
Mm-hmm.
And then his next movie was like 51st Dates, where he played like a lispy kid wearing a
Yeah.
a jacked
Dude,
workout
that was
thing.
so weird.
And you're just like, what? Like, how did you not get?
And here's the thing: Sean Astin is constantly turning in good performances, even in
all the
garbage
time.
movies. Like we had 51st Dates on as one of the shows that we've done here, and he is far and away one of the best parts of that movie, just because he commits and he gives a shit, and he's consummate professional.
That-
even when he doesn't have to be.
The professionalism of Sean Astin is out of control. He's so good.
He's too good.
Even when he was in like Encino Man.
Yeah.
And you just see an Encino Man, and you're like, he really is. I don't even know if he's having fun doing this, because he's so good. He's so into it. He's like Christian Bale, but somehow he ended up in like all these kind of like, you're like, is that the movie he ended up in? Because he's so good.
Christian Bale, more like Christian Fail. Am I right?
No, we don't want to say
Boom.
that. Sean, you're great.
Nah, Sean, you are great. If you're listening, just you don't have to take all these jobs, my
Yeah.
man.
Well, it was great. Like, I think Stranger Things was a great example of that cyclical, like, being placed in a Goonies type situation while being the adult. I thought was an interesting choice.
And in that, at least, he had a chance to sort of be an emotional anchor for the
Yeah.
series in Stranger Things. You
Yeah.
know, he was a great character. He didn't really have a whole lot to do, but then by the time they gave him stuff to do, it was so vital
that
and
shredded-
important.
it shredded me. Yeah.
Dude, I was so sad.
And I loved Sean. I will, because even watching this again last night, which this is a movie that like every once in a while I'm always like, was I wrong? Was I wrong about this? And then I'll pop it in, and like 45 minutes in, I'll be like, nope, no, I was right. Fuck this movie. It's garbage.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. When I watched it for the first time, I was probably I'm gonna go with like 20 years old, because I remember
wow.
it was in between my sophomore and junior years of college.
Was this a you haven't seen
It was
a
I
situation
basically
where
had
somebody was like,
I had a you haven't seen list.
Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of that summer. I was interning in New York, and I didn't, I was still too scared to do a lot of stand up. So I was going back to the place I was staying every night and just watching movies that I torrented. And The Goonies was one of those movies. And I remember watching it, and even then I was like, what's with the hype of this movie?
and it makes no sense to me.
I didn't get it.
It's like if The Sandlot was it's almost like a bunch of people did a lot of cocaine and just whipped a bunch of shit against the walls.
Yeah.
It almost seems like they took all of like it's the pizza ice cream orange juice thing, where it's like kids love pizza, kids love ice cream, kids love orange juice. Let's mix them all together and see what happens. And they did that. And some people, I think, just here. I don't know how to say this. You don't love this movie. You loved being 7.
Right.
Like that's kind of what you have to say to people. Is like, no, you just liked that you didn't have to pay taxes.
Yeah.
Like that's what you liked, not having to worry about anything. That's a movie about not having to worry about anything, where the point of the movie is the kids are worried about something. Mm-hmm. Like that's what you love.
It's a movie about nostalgia before people, I think, really gave a shit about nostalgia.
Yeah, it's like if you were anybody watching this movie and be like, imagine being a film critic during this movie and being like, I guess kids might like it. Like I don't know how would a film critic actually. What I wish I had done is found like Roger Ebert's review of this, just to see what the Chicago Tribune said about the Goonies, because it's just bad. It's just a bad movie.
You know what's crazy is The Rotten Tomatoes score for the Goonies is 70%. It's above average.
True, but Rotten Tomatoes means that 70% of critics thought it was at least 51% good.
Roger Ebert gave it 3 out of 4 stars.
See that? Now that's what I want to know. Like, I want to know what his thoughts were specifically.
This is the opening line of Roger Ebert's review. The Goonies is a smooth mixture of the usual ingredients from Steven Spielberg action movies, made special because of the high energy performances of the kids who have the adventures.
So he basically wrote like they had fun making this.
He was like, it's the pizza ice cream orange juice thing. We made this nasty orange Julius, and this is enough for kids to choke down.
Yeah.
And be like, wow, I get it all at once.
Yeah, there was like a big push, the hot topic push for the Goonies back in like the mid 2000s, and I was sitting there and I'm just like, I am embarrassed of my generation.
This is what you're choosing to put the basket you're putting all your eggs in,
like,
guys?
I saw more Goonies merch than I ever saw like Indiana Jones merch, and I'm just like, well, that's way cooler. Like, that's punching Nazis and getting into adventures. That's Spielberg, right?
Well, here's a really telling line from the end of the Roger Ebert interview. During Goonies, I was often exhilarated by what was happening. Afterward, I was less enthusiastic. The movie is totally manipulative, which would be okay, except it doesn't have the lift of a film like E.T. It has the high energy without the sweetness. It uses what it knows about kids to turn them up, while E.T. gave them things to think about and values to enjoy. The Goonies, like Gremlin, shows that Spielberg and his directors are absolute masters of how to excite and involve an audience. But that's the thing. This movie doesn't give. It's thrown out there so you can watch it and you're turning your brain off just to enjoy what's going on.
It's Jurassic World, not Jurassic Park.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
There's nothing that you can really. There's nothing to like.
It's a snack.
It's
not
stick
a meal.
with you. Yes,
I think that's the
exactly.
best way to put it. Yeah. It's almost in a way like fake food. You know, it's like you're just like, or like,
it's chicken. It's chicken nuggets.
Yeah,
it's the kid cuisine of movies.
Sure, yes, and it's funny because I hated it as a kid, and now as an adult, I'm watching it, and I hate it with bonus hate because of all. Like, as a kid, I grew up in an all white community in central Massachusetts. Like, I'm a farm kid. Like, I knew there was like one black family in the entire. I did not have much of an interaction with non-white people. Right. So I would not have been like, this is racist, because I didn't really understand that as a concept because I didn't see it. We didn't have Facebook and everything like that in the 80s. Right. And now I look back at it now and I'm like, this is fucking bullshit. Like, I get like kind of mad retroactively that it's I don't use the word, but it's like, it's almost retroactively offensive.
Well, racism plays so well back in the 80s, too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the other thing that Data had been known for was the year before when he was Short Round.
He was freaking Short Round,
dude. Did
Spielberg just buy that kid?
I think so.
And he's like, man, I'm just going to put you as like a sidekick in everything.
And he hasn't worked since. He had a movie come out every year up until 1992 when he was in Encino Man. A lot of foreign films. He was in Taiwanese movie.
Encino Man?
Yeah, he was
With
Kim in
Sean?
Encino Man.
Oh, yeah.
He was in a Taiwanese movie and 2 Japanese movies, and then he was in 2 Hong Kong movies in late 90s and early 2000s, and he hasn't done anything since then because he doesn't have to.
I mean,
he's making those Goonies and Temple of Doom residuals.
Yeah, like the residuals
off
for
of
that.
selling out his race back in the day.
It's really, I think it's really unfortunate because I think we can look at it that way, but I think a lot of Asian actors, and something we saw very recently with Crazy Rich Asians, is the entire team behind that is like, we've only been offered Short Round. Mm-hmm. And Long Duck Dongs and all this stuff. Like Hollywood never gave us a chance, so we had to take what we'd get. Right. And that's, do you keep your integrity and starve to death? Mm-hmm. Which is a thing in comedy, too. Yeah. Which is like, sometimes if you want to be humble and hope that only your reputation gets you gigs, you get nothing. Right. That's a thing I deal with regularly. Where I'm like, people will come to me, a straight white man, and offer me spots. And then I'm like, no. Because there are plenty of straight white men that are just bombarding bookers for spots. Oh, yeah. And people don't automatically think like, oh, Jeff's great. He's great. We'll call him. Like, nobody's thinking that when you've got squeaky wheels coming at you the whole time. Mm-hmm. So there is that sort of like, hey, integrity's cool, but not starving would also be cool. And so that's why I think something like Crazy Rich Asians is so important to sort of create something that doesn't fit the standard stereotype of like srickashes. Like that's what they had,
Right?
you know. No time for love, Dr. Jones.
Yeah,
like that's not.
There are no more parachutes. You don't have to do any of that.
Yeah, the Crazy Rich Asians was a great example of them being like, now we're just fucking literally normal people. I don't know why everybody has assumed we weren't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what else do you, watching this movie now, go back and reflect on and wish that this movie had done differently?
I feel like well, first off, the 80s stereotypes are so strong. Obviously, we talked about, but like the rich guy with the rich kid.
Yeah,
I do like that
they're literally trying to keep a country club from expanding. That's one of the most 80s tropes there is.
And another 80s trope that I forgot about was the classic 80s teenage attempted murder, where the guy with the car literally grabs Josh Brolin when he's on the little bicycle and just like drives 45 miles an hour and lets him go, and he careens off of a... Yeah, that's a good Karate Kid style attempted murder.
Dude, the 80s loved trying to kill teenagers. Teenagers
getting nearly killed by other teenagers was like... It's straight up attempted murder.
Yeah.
And but there's like the first off, the Andy character is awful for a female character.
Mm-hmm.
She is a lovelorn idiot whose only real decision is that she's going to stay with Josh Brolin versus the rich dick.
Right.
Like that's it. The other female character, who I forget, the kind of tomboyish glasses girl, she was much better.
Steph?
I'm guessing Steph.
Yeah, that's my guess.
But the Andy character is terrible. She's just this kind of boy crazy. The whole thing of her being like trying to kiss, like the love interest aspect was between her and Josh Brolin's character, and Mikey is he's Mikey, right? Josh Brolin.
No, Josh Brolin is the older brother, Brandon.
Oh yeah, Brandon.
Brand. Yeah, Mikey's Sean Astin.
Where
sweet boy Sean Astin.
They keep trying to like almost kiss and they don't, and it's just like there's nothing to it. There's no sentiment or emotion behind it whatsoever. It's just, we should probably have like the teenagers try to kiss.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's really shoehorned in. It's really not great. I loved the throw mama from the train lady.
Yeah.
That's one of the, like, there are bright spots in this movie in spite of me coming on to be like, fuck this movie. I like her as an actress. I think she was brilliant. And I liked, and I liked Sean Astin, but like, Joe Pantoliano as like the hairpiece guy, and the other guy who was in a million things, and I forget what his name was.
It's an 80s movie when you're even being racist against the white people.
Yeah. That's what I say. The Italians have only been white for like 40 years. Like,
and there's some other parts you gotta admire a movie that can pull off a really nice big set piece the way that it pulls off when they're actually finding the ship.
The pirate ship set must have been massive.
Yeah.
Like that whole, because that's a set. Like they built that ship, they built that lagoon. There's also an edited scene with an octopus that they smartly took out.
Oh wait, there is? I hadn't heard about this.
Yeah, it's a scene when they jump into the water of the pirate ship, and an octopus attacks them, and it's just garbage. There's a reason it's, and like it like keeps bumping up against not Andy but the other girl, Steph or whatever, and then she like ends up like punching Corey Feldman because she thinks he was like groping her. And it's like, no, it's an octopus.
That's super. Yep.
That's why at the end when the kids all see their parents and they're like, "Oh my God, there was we saw this and we saw that," and then Data's like, "There was a big octopus." To the dad, who also like had a ready to go camera because racism.
Right.
His Asian dad had literally like a springy camera on his belt.
Oh yeah, you got to have that. Everybody's very innovative.
Yeah, this is one of those movies. There are 80s movies that people hold into this very, very high regard. And I think it's sort of like the idea of like there's kind of like a Rick and Morty Doctor Who vibe where it's just like, yeah, even if the thing is okay, the fans are making me hate it. Aspect of that as well, where people build up this movie so bad, and when you finally watch it, you're like, no.
Yeah.
No, this is bad.
That's how I felt when I watched it. I was like, what's with all the hype for this movie?
Yeah, people still say it. They're like, Goonies never say die, and there's a band called the Goonies, and like, there's all this shit of this obsession with this mediocre garbage movie that just happened to exist when you were a kid.
It's a basic ass movie.
It's so basic, and it's so infuriating of how basic it is.
Because it doesn't have to be.
No.
This movie had so much potential to be an iconic movie and deserve to be an iconic movie.
I'll give you a perfect example of a parallel. When my brother and I were kids, like about that age, we used to secretly wake up around midnight every night when my parents were asleep, go into the living room, and we would put in a VHS and watch Stand By Me.
Okay.
Every night. Like, I'm talking 3 nights a week. I've seen that movie so many times. Stand By Me is another coming-of-age story about kids of a very similar, not era, but made of the same era. Like, it's an 80s movie. It's about sort of going on a hunt to find something. You know, they're going out to find the dead body. And that Stand By Me holds up as being one of these, like, really, really great movies in the Pantheon that deserves every piece of acclaim that it gets. The Goonies just cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And did a very sort of surface level version of what Stand By Me achieved with great script writing and great acting. So it's really interesting to me that Stand By Me, like, people don't freak out about Stand By Me the way they do the Goonies. There isn't that, like, there's no merch for Stand By Me.
Yeah. Everybody says you should see Stand By Me, but nobody's rocking a shirt.
Yeah, nobody's
with the characters from Stand By Me on it.
Yeah, there's not like a, whatever Maine blueberry pie eating contest.
Yeah.
T-Fury shirt. Or whatever.
There's no memes of Stand By Me.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
there's tons of memes of the Goonies.
Yeah, and it's always just some stupid invention that wouldn't work.
Yeah. It's just, I really, the point that you made a little while ago, that you can make a movie for kids and give them enough credit to believe that they'll be able to pick up on what's going on and not have to spoon feed it to them.
Which kids do better than adults, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And, I've heard that. Studies have shown that. And I think that is, when you make a movie for kids and you really want to make a timeless movie, you're doing a disservice by dumbing it down and making it all lights and big colors and sounds and crazy set pieces and fun quotable stuff. You can have some of those elements, but you can also have a movie that has a lasting effect.
The Sandlot.
The Sandlot.
Something that you brought up, which is a movie for kids, but any parent watching The Sandlot would be like, I can get into this because this reminds me of childhood and stuff like that. Goonies doesn't, to me, I'm not going to speak for, the entire movie-going world, but, like, that doesn't have that.
No.
That isn't there. Like, what do you hold on to after that movie? A couple of sound bites. That's the lesson, is that you say Goonies, never say die to somebody else, and you buy a T-shirt.
Yeah, or Sloth Love Chunk. You can remember that.
Yeah, you Baby Ruth. Like, that's the whole thing. That's it.
It's so, you don't have to make a movie that's easily digestible for kids. You don't have to.
No.
It's lazy.
That's why, and I think Ebert said, and you are sort of seconding the idea of, like, something like an E.T., where it's like, this is a good movie that is open for kids to enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, because kids, I remember adults a lot of times do not give kids the better benefit of the doubt.
No, of course.
I taught 8th grade for a decade, and I would always see these teachers that were like, oh, I don't know if they can handle this information, or I don't know if they can do this, or, because I taught history, they're like, I don't know, you're talking about terrorism in your Muslim thing, like your Muslim unit, like you're bringing that up. I'm like, imagine pretending to kids that 9/11 didn't happen 5 years ago or 6 years ago at the time. Like, imagine trying to bury your head in the sand and not bring up, okay, let's talk about, what the word terrorism is versus the preconceived notions that you might have about the entire world of the Muslim community.
Right.
And how that's, like, really wrong. And and I had, like, math teachers and English teachers who were, like, very reserved and conservative come up to me and be like, I don't know if you should talk about that. And I'm like, cool, I don't know if you should teach about fractions. Oh, it's not any of my business? Fantastic. Fuck off. Like, I had to be like that. And parents and a lot of adults didn't think kids could process and handle adult themes because they think of children as being closed vessels instead of open bottles.
Right.
Like if you have a water bottle with a cap on it and you try to pour water on it, it's just going to all splash everywhere and make a huge mess. But kids their minds are open. That's why school is early.
Yeah, because you have to fill the bottle.
And yeah, and kids will do that. You don't need to assume that all they have is what's in the bottle right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what the Goonies does. It presupposes that kids don't need to grow or use context clues or anything like that. And even adults get that now.
Yeah.
You know? That's why movies like, I think a good example, because they came out around the same time, is when Avengers 2 and Mad Max Fury Road came out. And Mad Max Fury Road was just like, this is the world we live in. You can fill in the blanks. Enjoy this fucking ride. And it's amazing. And everybody's like, this is the best movie of the year. Meanwhile, Avengers 2 is like, here's how this happened, which is how this happened, and this happened. And meanwhile, this is happening while this is happening. And they're not giving you any room to just be like, yeah, I get it. Like, they have to explain how everything works instead of just being like, this is a fucking movie and you can figure it out by the things we're saying and doing.
Yeah.
And that's like a Goonies example. And I use the Stand By Me versus the Goonies example, which is like one of those is going to really hold up better and one of them isn't.
Yeah. And that, you know what? That's the most baffling thing to me in doing any kind of research for this episode is finding out that this movie was labeled culturally significant enough to be everlasting. It doesn't. It says a lot about the kinds of adults that exist now. I think that they're going back and being like, oh yeah, I remember that. It felt so silly during that time.
We're trying to
Wouldn't we love to feel that again?
Yeah, we're buying memories back, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I paid money to go to a He-Man convention and I bought yeah.
What?
Let me explain this to you.
Oh my
If you want
God.
to hear, because here's the thing. My head is not above water on this nostalgia thing.
No, you're
I'm
wearing
not,
a Fraggle Rock t-shirt right now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I went to a museum and paid museum gift shop prices for this shirt.
Oh,
For
God.
the Jim Henson exhibit at Skirball. And I went to a Masters of the Universe, a He-Man convention that I didn't know existed. I perform at comic book conventions all the time. That's like you've done my show.
Yeah,
my
I did your show at a comic book shop.
My show is in a collectible and vintage toy and comic book shop.
Yeah.
And so,
By the way, side note, best show I've ever done that was lit by fluorescent lighting.
thank you very much.
Far and away.
The best compliment I ever got was from a comic who messaged me, and he said, everything about your show is the ingredients of something that should not work, and it works better than anything I've ever done. And that was a really great compliment because the lights are on. You're you're on the same footing level as the audience because they're just sitting in chairs right in front of you. Lights are on. It's a store open for business. You're telling jokes in front of toys, and yet somehow it just works.
It just does.
And I love that. It's one of the things I'm happiest about in comedy is that I've managed to make the impossible very possible.
But anyways,
so I went to a He-Man convention and I spent more money than I'm comfortable sharing on animation cells. From cartoons, I bought a He-Man animation cell. Of course I did. I bought a Captain N the Game Master, which was a Nintendo cartoon animation cell. I bought an animation cell from the Paula Abdul video Opposites Attracts featuring MC Scat Cat. I am not above this. I am mired in garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And even I am like, now fuck this.
Yeah.
Like, this is not going to work.
It says a lot about this movie that this is where you draw the line.
I'm like, if I tell people I hate the Goonies, it's like I told them, like, I love beating cats. Just love it. Like, people get so shocked. They get like generally like, but wait a second, how old are you? And I'm like, I'm Goonies age. like I am of the age where this was everything marketed to me. I mean, I couldn't be more of that time and era if I wasn't just sitting there, eating Crunch Berries and watching Saturday morning cartoons while listening to, bad hip hop or something.
Yeah.
Like it's just, I'm such a product of the 80s, and yet this thing that sort of is, you're like, what are 5 things you think about with the 80s? Like the Goonies. Can't do it.
Well, I'm glad that you're one of the enlightened few who realizes that the Goonies is hot trash.
It's one of the only things I'm enlightened about. I like so much garbage. It's so like, I'm like, there are things I'm never embarrassed about what I like, but sometimes I'm like, I shouldn't like this, and I know that.
Usually I ask people around the end what's a movie they would recommend, and you've said some stuff from the 80s that I think would work better. What is the one garbage thing that you are going to die on this hill for.
A movie that I will die on a hill for?
Yes.
Your Highness.
Really?
Yes,
I will. The one with James Franco and Danny McBride?
James Franco and Danny McBride. It is a medieval era comedy, action comedy that is somehow also a kind of a weed comedy.
Right.
Even though it's not as much as the title would suggest.
And the trailer and the title made it look like, oh, there's going to be weed and dragons. And that's all this movie is.
And there are some things in Your Highness that I think are brilliant. The idea of juxtaposing like this very flowery old English speech with every once in a while just adding like the word fucking idiot or something in the middle of it. Like, verily thou art a fucking idiot. Like, I think that's flawless. I think that's such a punchline just by doing that, I think is great. There's one scene with a villain that's one of the most creative fantasy villains I've ever seen, which I don't want to ruin it, but like, it's sort of where they meet the Natalie Portman character as well. But like, it's a very brilliant movie that everybody's like, this movie is terrible. And I think it's really, really funny.
Wow.
I stand by, I love Your Highness, and I don't smoke weed. Like, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you've met an LA comedian that doesn't smoke weed.
I thought after the He-Man thing that my eyes couldn't get wider from a comment you made on the show, and I don't have eyelids anymore.
For someone that doesn't drink or smoke weed, I love things that somehow reference those two things a lot. Like, I don't get it.
Such an enigma.
It's so strange. Everything about me is sort of the opposite of what you kind of would expect. Like, if you were to see me on the street, you're like, that bully is a piece of shit. And I'm like, that nerd is a piece of shit. I will die. I will die on the hill of Your Highness. I stand by it so hard. And the R-rated version of White Chicks.
Okay. Interesting picks.
That one. Only the R-rated version. Don't see the PG-13 version. It's not good.
Noted. Where can we watch the R-rated version?
I mean, it was always. I mean, now with streaming, I think you can just literally, if you were to even go on Amazon, I think you can get. They'll tell you which version it is now.
Okay. I'm going to check that out.
Although I think Amazon Prime has RoboCop, and it doesn't say.
They have the unrated version.
Somebody shared that with me a couple weeks ago, and I watched it. And yeah, it's the X-rated version.
You know what? I've never seen RoboCop. I got to watch it.
You do. That is it. I actually taught a lesson on RoboCop to my pop culture course. I'm sure we don't have enough time for that, but it is a fantastic parable of United States in the 80s. It's the Christ parable. It's very fascinating. But I did want to say one other thing about sort of like 80s product and everything that I've consumed. I bought a box of RoboCop trading cards.
Okay.
And you got to remember that back in the day, like, trading cards were designed for children. There was gum.
Right.
There was gum in there and a sticker. Mm-hmm. And like, I look at these cards, and these cards have brutal massacres on them for children. We're talking scenes where like people's arms are getting blown off, and the card is like the special effects of like the blood everywhere.
Oh, wow.
It's the greatest thing in the world.
That sounds fantastic.
It's amazing. I think I remember even posting like, Facebook posts about it, just being like, these are for children.
As a kid who almost was not allowed to play Super Smash Brothers Melee because it was rated T for teen, I wish someone had slipped some RoboCop trading cards into my life.
Where are you from?
Texas. I grew up in outside of Dallas.
Say no more.
Yeah.
I get it.
You get it.
That all makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I have a friend from Arlington, Texas, and he's just like, man, my parents wouldn't let me do anything, and like all that stuff now, I only would have liked as a kid. He's like really bummed because he missed out on liking crap, and when he had to revisit it as an adult, he's like, oh, it sucks as an adult.
It does, dude. That's where I'm at. That's where I spent my pretty much most of my late teens, early 20s when I was finally out from under the thumb of that upbringing, and I was like, let's go experience all this shit, and a lot of it is not good.
RoboCops will be good for that.
Cool.
I mean, RoboCop was an example of one of those things from the 80s that it was popular in the 80s to the point where they made it for kids. So it ended up being a RoboCop animated series, RoboCop toys. That was... Again, I don't have enough time. I used to teach a pop culture course for gifted and talented high school kids. And that was one of the things that I really like to focus on, is how like the 80s would take adult properties and then they would make Rambo cartoons and RoboCop cartoons and these things that are like grisly R-rated, and then turn them into consumable children's garbage. And
That's so wild.
It's the Reagan era. It really is. We during the Cold War, at the height of the Cold War in the 1980s, we were so focused on the militarization that's why you saw all these really big sort of militarized cartoons and things. That's why like G.I. Joe and Transformers and these things that are in perpetual states of war. That's why they became so popular. Whereas now you don't have that in your cartoons for kids anymore.
Right.
Now it's usually more fantasy adventure based versus conflict in a military world based.
Man. That's so wild.
Yeah.
Jeff, I've really appreciated not only this podcast, but also this brief pop culture history lesson you've thrown at me.
Using that degree.
Where can the listeners find you?
I'm on the socials, Twitter, Instagram at Hey There, Jeffro. You can figure that one out. I run a really fun live stand-up show at Blast from the Past, which is a toy store in Burbank called Mint on Card.
Great show.
Thank you. We loved having you on, and we look forward to getting you on again.
It was such a fun show, man. I had a blast.
Oh, we had my favorite food truck there last time. It was the
Filipino
Texas
food truck, right?
Well, the one from recently.
Last
It's this. It's called the it's like a Roadhouse barbecue food truck, and they just make such great food. I have a podcast called Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, where me and Tom Ryman, formerly of Cracked, watch every.
Had him on the show before too.
Oh, great!
Yep.
What did he?
Shape of Water.
Okay, all right, that's fair. Well, he and I watch. We're literally watching everything about Batman that has happened with Batman in a sort of linear way, and we just dissect it from a 30-something-year-old comedian standpoint. Like, this was weird, right? And I also have a network coming out called That's Good Pod. And that'll be really fun.
Great. Well, be sure you check all that out.
So much stuff. Edit all that out. When we're in production, we'll edit all that out. Nobody wants to hear any of that.
You can find me on the internet at Diet J on Twitter and Instagram.
Love that name, by the way.
I've had that one since high school, man.
It's perfect.
It's the only thing from high school. I just did a purge of getting rid of a whole bunch of shit from my house, like clothes, and I'm working through it. And there's a lot of stuff from high school that I am ditching and donating and getting out into the world. But that, I'll hold on to it with all my
so good
deepest grip. Of course, you can find my show dates at jlightcomedy.com. And if you like the podcast, leave a review, subscribe on iTunes. The reviews help bump me up and get me higher on the charts. And you know what? Finally, maybe we can crack that top 200, break through some of these podcasts about movies that came out 10 years ago and still somehow have more listeners and subscribers than me every week.
We just got to get that foothold. We'll get you that Jeff May bump.
Let's get that Jeff May bump, baby. Folks, this has been Blockbusting. Go see something good for a change.
Yeah. Use that AMC stubs.
Get in there.
Go see some good stuff.
Fuck Movie Pass.